It's been one of my lifelong dreams to visit Tibet. When I was in college 50 years ago, I read about holy men with supernatural powers who had incredible control of their bodies, could stay warm in sub-zero temperatures with little or no clothes on, men who could leave their bodies and return at will. They'd been hidden behind these formidable mountains, but now at last one can fly in. I realized it was very unlikely that I would find such a holy man, but I wanted to try. I'd met some very advanced Tibetans in India in '67 when my husband and I made a film about these refugees who had such control over their vocal muscles that an individual could sing chords. That film lamented the invasion of Tibet by the Chinese and began like this.
Tibet is no more. The land remains, of course, and people continue to live there. But Tibet was more than a land with people. It was a land where life and outlook were shaped by a tradition so strange, so powerful, that it captured the imagination of the world. With the Chinese invasion of 1951, that tradition, centering in Tibetan Buddhism, its religion, was snapped.
It was called Requiem for a Faith, and the people I met in making that film made me even more eager to go to Tibet. But the borders have been closed until recently. Now, at long last, I was here. On the drive from Kathmandu to Lhasa, Mount Everest often looms in the background. The altitude varies between 12,000 and 17,000 feet, and at this height it's extraordinary to see how much farming there is. But the most striking feature of the landscape is the ruins of monasteries perched high on the tops of hills. Before 1951, there were 20,000 monasteries. Now, only 13 are left. What a strange country. So barren, so alien. I thought I'd feel at home, but instead I felt stranger than ever before in any land. This didn't look or feel like a country that nurtured any kind of spiritual development. To be sure, many Tibetans still practice their rituals of prostration and prayer wheels, but I never got the feeling that it had meaning for them. Perhaps this was my fault. I didn't speak the language. I felt alien. I couldn't enter into their psyche in any way. My hope of finding a holy man began to fade. I resigned myself to just being a tourist and figured that if a holy man appeared, it would be a miracle. So, as one of many tourists, I saw the Potala. It was once the winter home of the Dalai Lama, but he now lives in exile in Dharamsala, India. After the Chinese invasion, Tibet was closed to visitors for a long time, but now there's a steady stream of tourists. I wasn't about to give up my search, though. So, since many Tibetans had fled to India, I decided to go there, to Dharamsala, where the Dalai Lama makes his home in exile. A sizable monastery has grown up here with several hundred monks in residence. One objective is to preserve their culture, so a good-sized library is being developed and a school for Thangka painting. Thangkas are the paintings used by Tibetan Buddhists for meditation. They're sort of a map of the subconscious. To us, they are, to say the least, a bit bizarre, with frightful, grimacing deities who dance on human bodies. But to the Tibetans, each figure represents a different aspect of his own personality. And meditation on these qualities helps him pursue his own self-understanding. Some monks were building a small dormitory at the foot of the hill. They were enjoying themselves hugely as they worked with the most primitive of means. I asked myself, what was it that caused them to enjoy this monotonous, hard labor when at home such a job would provoke slow down and disgruntled beefing? I thought of the words of the noted economist E.F. Schumacher, who said that Buddhist economics is very different from the economics of modern materialism, since the Buddhist sees the essence of civilization not in the multiplication of wants, but in the purification of character. Well, when I left, it was getting dark, so I decided to take a shortcut because I knew our hotel was just at the top of that mountain, and the other way was a switchback, so it would take twice as long. And I walked for about 15 minutes or so, and then I began to go downhill. I knew that wasn't right. So I pulled myself up to another little path. It's very steep here. I had to hang on the bushes and walk down that, and I ran into a barbed wire fence. So I was really beginning to get scared because the dogs were barking and I'd heard they were dangerous. And I really didn't know what to do. And then I saw a little gate and I thought, well, okay, try this. And I went through it and came around to a little hut with a light on. I thought, thank God, but they won't understand a word I'm saying. Anyhow, I yelled, help, I'm lost. And out came a little figure. I couldn't tell whether it was a man or a woman because the head was shaved and it was so dark. And this person said in the gentlest voice, you're lost? Well, I can help you. And she put on her shoes and led me back to my hotel. She was an American, a Tibetan Buddhist nun, and she'd been there for 8 years. And on the way, we were talking, and I told her that I was there to make a film about Tibetan Buddhism, that I'd made one once before called Requiem for a Faith. And she said, Requiem for a Faith? Why, that's a classic. And she remembered many scenes from it. So naturally, I fell in love with her. Patricia Zen, for that's her name, walks this rocky mountain path every day to the monastery where she studies and helps with translation. She's 42 years old and has been in Dharamsala for 8 years, has 4 more to go. The thing that struck me most about her was her gentleness, the sweetness that seemed to pervade her whole being. A really perfect role model and example of the power of Buddhism in shaping personality. How incredible that I would never have met her if I hadn't gotten lost. I asked her about her life.
Well, I live in a small cottage in the forest, a cottage that was originally a servant's quarters. It's built of cow dung and mud, and I'm lucky now to have a wooden floor, which is a great improvement because it's much warmer. I've made a little garden around the outside and tried to grow some vegetables, though it's not so easy because of the hindrances such as cows, monkeys, langurs, insects, goats, and so forth. But I still try. And this year I've got some nice marigolds and some nice dahlias, which are the most reliable, of course. I cook over kerosene, a kerosene stove, and I carry water in a bucket from the water tank, which is not too far away, and bathe also from a bucket, heat up a little bit of water in a pot over the kerosene stove, and pour the hot water in the bucket and add some cold, make a nice mix and pour it over my head with a cup. And it's actually a very refreshing experience and you appreciate it a lot. Then I cook vegetarian food myself, and we have now tofu in town. I bake my own bread. Of course, there's no heating, which is hard in the winter. And since I'm from Honolulu, it's hard to take the cold. And it's truly the simple life. From my point of view, life in the West is very convenient on many levels. Stoves, showers, cars, telephones, and so forth. But it creates a lot of busyness. The people are always so busy that they don't have time to really look inside. So from my point of view, just simply convenience is not the meaning of life. To seek the meaning of life, we have to sit still. We have to look inside. And for this, it's nice to have a simple environment. Even if it's inconvenient, you're in touch with the water you bring every day in the bucket. You're in touch with the food that you grow, the few vegetables that I do manage to eke out of the ground. There's an organic relationship between oneself and one's surroundings. Living in the forest is very peaceful and quiet. I have not heard a telephone ring in 3 years. This for me brings great happiness. I could have these things anytime I wanted to. I could be on a plane tomorrow back to Honolulu and enjoy all the comforts. But there's always a give and take. There are advantages to life in the West, and one day I will go back, of course.
This encounter with Patricia was in October at the end of the trip to Tibet. She told me about a conference she was planning for Buddhist nuns to be held in Bodh Gaya in February. I was so impressed by her gentleness and her strength that I determined to try to come back to India to record this historical event on film, the first international conference of Buddhist nuns. And so, in February, I arrived in Bodh Gaya, the day before the opening ceremony. Bodh Gaya is a village like hundreds of villages in India that seem not to have changed in thousands of years. The head is still a primary mode of transport for large bundles. Babies are still bathed at the local well. Barbers, sitting Indian fashion, ply their trade on the side of the street. Tailors sew it while you wait. And dung patties dry on the wall. It's like other Indian towns in those ways, but the thing that sets Bodh Gaya apart is the giant stupa which commemorates Buddha's enlightenment. It dominates the landscape and transforms the mood of the thousands who come here on pilgrimage. This is the offspring of the very tree under which the Buddha sat 2,600 years ago, honored with candles at its feet and festooned with dozens of prayer flags.
Well, everything's worked out really well. I'm very pleased with the way things have gone. It was especially nice that His Holiness the Dalai Lama could open the proceedings.
Bodh Gaya came to life. The Tibetans adore the Dalai Lama as a symbol of their country. Buddhists adore him as a symbol of their religion. The most prized gift any visitor can take to Tibet is a picture of the Dalai Lama. When he arrived at the Mahabodhi Society, Patricia and 140 nuns from all over the world were there to greet him.
His Holiness the Dalai Lama is both the temporal and spiritual head of the Tibetan people. He oversees all of the 4 Buddhist traditions that are now current in Tibetan Buddhism. And he is also responsible for the welfare of the people in general. In other words, he is head of the Tibetan government as well as the head of the Tibetan Buddhist order. So he serves both a temporal function and a spiritual function, and all Tibetans regard him highly in both capacities.
What is the attitude of the Dalai Lama toward women?
Well, in his opening ceremony, he gave a lot of very important advice for spiritual development of women. He pointed out very clearly that in terms of spiritual development, realization, and enlightenment, there's basically no intrinsic difference between men and women. Achievement in the field of spiritual practice depends on one's own qualifications and one's own diligence.
You know, Arnold Toynbee, the great historian, said that when the history of this period is written, it won't be the wars or the Mideast crisis or any of that sort of thing that we think of. It will be the influence of Buddhism on the West. Do you agree with that?
Western people these days would never accept something that's not logical, something that they have to accept on faith alone. This is one reason for sure that Western people are taking to the Buddhist teachings. Also because Buddhism speaks to the personal needs of an individual. There's a very elaborate psychology in the Buddhist texts, very clear explanations of the way the mind works and the various factors of the mind. It also explains clearly about the relationships between people. It was beautiful for me to see the way that the women related to one another and participated so harmoniously together, speaking directly from their own experience.
Sylvia Wetzel, a nun from Germany.
And then it's experiential. They give you teachings, and they say, you can experience the truth of it yourself. And so that's very appealing to a Western mind who is very experiential. I mean, this is a similarity between science and Buddhism. It's based on experience. You have a thesis, a hypothesis, and then you prove it through your own experience if it's true. And all the teachings of the Buddhas are laid out like that. So it appeals to these attitudes of Westerners. It's practical, it's pragmatic, it's related to everyday life. It's not something set aside for 1 day a week or 1 hour a week. Whatever teaching I hear today, I can check out today, I can practice today and feel the benefit tomorrow. So it's very pragmatic, experiential, scientific, rational, and it works.
There seems to me to be a lot of ritual. Could you explain the importance of the ritual? How do you feel about that?
Well, some of the Buddhist traditions emphasize ritual more than others. All of the Buddhist traditions do some form of chanting. It is usually just the chanting of a text, which explains things just like what we've been talking about, the delusions that overlay the mind stream and how to eliminate those delusions to achieve awakening, to achieve an unconfused, clear state of mind. So there's meaning to the ritual. There's meaning to the chanting. And one has to be able to understand the words in order to understand the meaning of the ritual. The Buddha actually preached against ritual which had no meaning. He was a revolutionary against that sort of meaningless ritual that the people couldn't relate to. So when the ritual has meaning, when the chanting has meaning to us, then we can use it. And some people in the West are also very interested in the chanting and in the ritual.
What about the prostration, though?
Well, prostrations is also meaningful. It's actually taken from ancient Indian culture. In the centuries before Christ, when Buddhism became popular in India, it was the custom for people to bow to their elders, to their parents, and to their teachers. It is said to be an expression of humility, so that when one bows, for example, to the Buddha, one is bowing to the concept of enlightened mind, not to something outside ourselves, but to that enlightened nature which all of us have within us. So we're humbling ourselves before that enlightened force which is within each being. And it's said to really induce humility within a person. So it has great meaning. In the beginning, it's very difficult for Western people to prostrate. But once they understand the meaning, then it makes sense.
When I was in Dharamsala, you made it possible for me to film some monks debating. And they seemed to be having a marvelous time, but I didn't understand what was going on.
Debate is a special system for discussing the philosophical texts. It is a method for examining and testing what one has learned. By answering questions and putting questions to the other debaters, one is able to deepen one's understanding of the text. So it's a very useful methodology in integrating the material into one's mind. Once you've debated things, you really understand what you know and what you don't know. And it is very useful in being able to answer people's questions about the Buddha's teachings.
We can do so much with them.
Every day after group meditation, there were lectures, discussion groups, and workshops. The nuns were particularly interested in simplifying the ordination process, since they, like women in other faiths, have in some places been discriminated against. Patricia was always there, gentle, kind, and calm. Patricia had extraordinary discipline. Even during the conference, when the demands on her time were great, she never failed to meditate and to study the text. I was beginning to see that my search for a holy man with paranormal powers was misguided. The exterior of the new Tibetan Buddhist temple in Bodh Gaya is covered with murals done the traditional Tibetan way, vivid colors and mythological figures, to us interesting but baffling. To fully appreciate them, one needs to understand the symbolism. The murals inside are quite different. They depict the life of the Buddha and are done in Western style. The artist, Marianne Rydvald, is Swedish.
I was brought up loving Jesus Christ, and for me it is the great teachers are beyond all these limitations that we make. For me it is like their message is the same. It's a message of love, of becoming better human beings so we can help others. Love and compassion is a universal need that has existed endlessly, you see. It's not like one can say that, oh, it starts from when you meet this religion or this religion. It's universal, a universal need within us to grow, to become better human beings, so we can help others, so we can hopefully establish world peace that we all wish for.
sentence is more about becoming a nun. Because to be celibate is something very strange in the West. People don't understand. I understand that a spiritual path helps me to become whole, to, let's say, in a psychological terminology, to withdraw all projections. What's the spiritual path about? I have to withdraw my projections on others, that you make me happy, that this makes me happy, that this makes me happy. I have to understand that my mind makes me happy. So to become a celibate, to become a nun, means, on a very fundamental level, to withdraw the projection that another person can make me happy. So it really channels my energy, focuses on my mind, and helps me really to educate myself that happiness comes from inside. And the outside conditions are just helpers. They say cooperative causes, to let the inner cause of happiness ripen.
One day, we went to meditate at one of the holy places where the Buddha is supposed to have been.
In the Buddhist view, every action can be a means of meditation. Whether one is sitting, eating, walking, everything one does can be a type of meditation. The formal meditation of sitting is more or less a preparation for the rest of daily life. One practices in quietude to still the mind, to concentrate the mind. And then with that stillness, with that concentration, one goes about the daily life, all the ordinary actions. Nothing changes except one's awareness. Meditating in a place like Bodh Gaya is especially effective for some reason. That doesn't mean you can't meditate anywhere. You can. You can meditate in New York. You can meditate in the subway. But it's good to, in the beginning, when one's just learning to meditate, to do it in a quiet place, a secluded place, without so many interruptions. Interruption is the nature of the mind already. It's so easy to become distracted. Many different activities, many different relationships, planning for the future, running over the past. It's so difficult to stay in the moment. That in the beginning, we have to make all of the conditions as ideal as possible.
Circumambulating the stupa is a common form of meditation among the Buddhists in Bodh Gaya. Patricia began her day there. This frail figure who gained her strength from discipline and self-awareness. She had given us all a week that was one of life's highlights. And I had found my holy person.